Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Cracking the Cat Code, Understanding Feline Behaviour and Welfare. My name is Yiming, and I'll be your MC for this session. Our guest speaker for today is Dr. Jenna Kiddie, who has flown in from the UK to join us. Jenna is a specialist in applied animal behaviour and welfare. She has a wealth of experience working with both dogs and cats. Apart from being the head of canine behaviour at Dogs Trust, she has been working in the animal welfare and academic sectors for the last 20 years, with experience in assessing and improving the behaviour and welfare of cats living in different environments, scientific research, and adult education and training. She also volunteers for her local cat trap, neuter, and return program. We hope this seminar helps you to better understand the science behind common cat behavior issues and strengthens the bond with your cats. Without further ado, let us welcome Jenna.
Okay, I think we're good to go. Hello everyone, can everyone hear me up at the back? Yes, brilliant. Right then, so I'm here to talk about cats. So we're going to talk all about cats this afternoon, everything about cats, but specifically we're going to be talking about their natural behaviour or their ethology, how that ethology or behaviour develops in the key developmental stages for their behaviour, how they communicate with each other and with us, what their body language looks like. We're going to just very briefly look at some problematic behaviours. We can't go into too much detail. And then we're going to look at some potential solutions for addressing some of those problematic behaviours. The reason we're not going to go into too much detail about problematic behaviours is that they're very individual and they're very complex. So I trained as a clinical animal behaviourist, and my shortest consultation was 3 hours long. So I think we only have 3 hours together to talk about everything to do with cats rather than just one specific cat's behaviour problems. So we can't really go into too much detail. Do feel free to stop and ask me any questions as we go along, but if you have any questions about your own cat's behaviour, then just be aware that I can't really give you tailored advice for your cat's behaviour. I can give you very top line, very generic advice, but we can't really get into the nitty-gritty because I don't have 3 hours to give each and every one of you sort of, detailed help. Also, for those of you who are here this morning, going to be slightly repetitious this afternoon. We do have to go through the fundamentals of cat behaviour, communication and body language to then address the problematic behaviours. So there will be some sort of repeated information from this morning. So for those of you who are just joining us for this afternoon, this morning was a session for community cat caregivers rather than pet owners, so just so that you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're going to talk first of all about the social behaviour of our domestic cats. So our domestic cats can live in social groups very successfully, but really only under very specific circumstances. So naturally occurring groups of cats are made up of related females mostly. We do have obviously male cats, but they tend to hang around on the outskirts of the females' territories, either individually or they might create brotherhoods where they sort of group together as males. But the groups that we tend to see as colonies are usually related females. Now the size of those groups would naturally, if they were naturally occurring social groups of cats, reflect the availability of resources that are available, largely food resources. And this means that they are very cooperative societies. They're not having to compete over food. They're going off and hunting individually and just taking small prey items and eating that prey item themselves. They're not cooperatively hunting like big predators would be. So they're not having to compete over food. So this means that aggression in naturally occurring colonies of cats is actually very rare. And instead we see lots of friendly, affiliative behaviours. So I don't see cat cases anymore, but when I did, and it was a multi-cat household, the first thing I would ask is, are your cats friends? And most of the owners would say, yes, of course they are. And I would say, okay, do they rub each other? Do they groom each other? Do they co-rest? So do they rest in physical contact with each other? So allo rubbing or allo grooming, the allo just means that you're doing the behaviour to another individual. So you're rubbing another individual, you're grooming another individual. So rubbing is a really friendly behaviour, but it has a special function. So every individual cat has their own unique scent profile. So cats can recognise each other because of that individual scent profile. But when they rub against each other, they're mixing up their scents, they're sharing their scents, and they're creating a group scent profile. So they can recognise each other as individuals, but also as members of the same social group. Allo grooming, so when they groom each other, that's a nice bonding behaviour. So it is helping swapping scent, but it's also just reaffirming that these are kin, that they're bonded individuals. And these are actually brothers. Okay, but unfortunately, if a cat is to come into the social group from outside, then in the cat's head, they don't think there are enough resources to support an extra cat. So they will use extreme, or can use extreme aggression to drive that other cat away. And that is coming from a sense of survival. That's a survival instinct. So unfortunately, cats do see other cats who are not members, who are not perceived as being members of the same social group, as being hugely threatening to their own survival. And we do see quite a lot of serious aggression towards other cats. So we might see this kind of behaviour. Does this look familiar? Does it sound familiar?
Yes.
So what's happening here? What's the tabby doing? They're trying to get as big as possible, trying to be as threatening as possible. What's the pale-coloured cat doing? They're trying to retreat, yes. So, when cats who don't perceive each other as being members of the same social group, I'm sorry, let's go past that now. So when cats who don't perceive each other as being members of the same social group come into physical contact with each other, it's very difficult for them to get out of that conflict without using aggression. Because they don't have appeasement gestures, they don't have a visual signalling system to say, oh my, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, just, let's just call it quits and we'll both go our opposite ways. They can't do that, unlike humans and dogs. So, they get into that conflict, they get into that standoff. And what we saw with these two cats, one was more confident and getting bigger and more threatening, and the other one was trying to make themselves really small and very slowly back away. And we didn't see the end of this interaction because these things can go on for a long time. And we're laughing, but actually, if you're one of those cats, that's incredibly stressful. But what would eventually happen is that grey-coloured cat would have backed off enough to a large enough distance that they can turn around and run away. What happens if they misjudge that distance and they haven't backed off enough? Are there any vets in the room? Any vet nurses, any vet techs? Anyone who's ever worked in a veterinary practice before? No? What usually happens then is if they turn around and run away too quickly, they get bitten on the bum. Because that running away behaviour triggers chase behaviour in the other cat. So they really have to time it perfectly. They have to back off slowly enough that they're not triggering that chase behaviour. And then once they're far enough away, they can turn around and run away. That's generally the only way that they can get out of that situation without fighting. But of course, fights do happen, and you'll get a lot of scratch marks around the head and the neck and the chest and the shoulder area as well. So, how would cats avoid coming into social conflict with each other in the first place? Good question. We'll come back to that. Before we go on to that, we have to understand territory. So cats are territorial animals. Their territory is made up of a core area and a hunting ground. So the core area is where they do all of their vulnerable behaviours like sleeping, eating, resting, grooming, being with other cats and showing affiliative behaviour with other cats. All the behaviours that they have to let their guard down to do, and that makes them vulnerable to attack, either from another cat or from a predator. So they have to know that they're safe when they're doing these behaviours. Out in the hunting area, that's a slightly dangerous area because they might be coming across other cats, they might be coming across predators. So they have to be on their guard the whole time. This picture up here is taken from a BBC Two programme, documentary about cats and their territories, and it's based on research from Bristol Vet School in the UK. So each of these coloured blobs, so there's a blue blob, purple, purple, red, red, a green colour and a yellow colour. So all of these colours are different cats, and all those cats are wearing GPS trackers on their collars. So the researchers wanted to see how big the territories were, how often they went to the different parts of the territory, what routes they took, and did the cats interact, did the cats overlap their territories. And as you can see from here, hopefully you can see the colours. I know not all of you will be able to see the colours, but take my word for it if you can't. The territories don't actually overlap geographically very much, and that's quite unusual. This is a relatively underpopulated part of Bristol. In more built up areas with more cats, we would expect the territories to overlap a little bit more. But what's of interest, I haven't noticed that. Is there a blue squiggle there as well? There might be another cat that I missed. But what's of interest is that this red cat's territory is split up by the purple and the green cat. And there is actually some overlapping. You can see the red is sort of underneath the yellow, the green and the purple there. So there is some overlapping of territories. But cats, their territories aren't necessarily continuous. They might be split up by other cats' territories, which means that they will have to walk through another cat's territory to get to their different hunting areas. Now that can be very threatening, that can be very dangerous. So how do they avoid coming into contact with each other? So going back to my question, one way of doing this is using elevated surfaces. So outside they would be using walls, fences, rooftops or houses and garages. In your HDB blocks for your community cats, they will be using the sheltered walkways, the eaves underneath the sheltered walkways, they will travel along at different heights. So they avoid coming into conflict with each other that way. We have a quick quiz here, I think, hopefully. So point your cameras at this. It will ask you for your name. You do not need to put your name. This isn't an actual quiz, there's no prizes. It's just to let you into the system. So you can just put a letter or a number, or you can make up a silly name like we had this morning. I love all the cat named themes. Cat named themes? That doesn't make sense, does it? Cat themed names. I'll just give it a couple of seconds more so that, because you can see up in the corner here how many people have joined, and there's definitely more than that in the room right now. Maybe we should have a prize for the best name. Okay, let's move on to the actual question then. So we've just talked about territories and using elevated surfaces to avoid coming into contact with each other. But how else would a cat, what other behaviours would a cat use to avoid coming into conflict with each other or to reduce social conflict with another cat? So hopefully the question should be popping up on your phone. Yes, so some of you are answering. Okay, so almost everyone has answered, so we'll see what answers you come up with. So most of you have said avoidance, I would agree with that. Some of you have said appeasement, some of you said aggression, some of you said displacement behaviours. So I didn't actually explain what displacement behaviours are, and this might be a new term for a lot of you. Displacement behaviours are just normal cat behaviours that are done out of context. So, as we saw from that video of the two cats, they are equally motivated to run away or to fight. Or, well, maybe not equally motivated. The tabby was more motivated to fight and the pale cat was more motivated to run away. We could see that in the video. But what if they're equally motivated to do one or the other and they can't quite decide which would offer the best outcome? What behaviours are cats always ready to do? If we think of a cat, what do we think of them doing? Just in general, not in terms of social conflict. Grooming. Cats are fastidious animals. They're very clean. They have a reputation of being very clean. So they're always ready to have a wash. So what happens if a cat is equally motivated to run away or to fight? The third most motivated behaviour just suddenly pops up and is expressed. And with cats, it's usually grooming. So we can quite often see cats grooming at really bizarre times. Think, well, how is that relevant to this context? What are you doing? You know, you're about to have a fight and you've suddenly stopped to wash your bum? Like, what are you doing? And that is what a displacement behaviour is. So it's not a form of communication, it's not a coping strategy, they're just struggling to know what else to do for the better. And they go to their default behaviour, which for cats is grooming. Okay, so you see it often in situations of social conflict, but it's not actually doing anything to resolve the situation. Cats also don't have the ability to use appeasement like dogs and humans do. They evolved from a solitary species, so there was no one to say sorry to. And there's no one to use those facial expressions and body, sort of averting the gaze and tucking the tail under, making yourself really small and apologetic. There was no one to see that because they're not coming into conflict with each other, because they're not coming into social contact with each other in the first place. Unfortunately, when they do, it's difficult for them to get out of it without using aggression. Okay, so cats will use avoidance if possible to prevent themselves coming into social conflict with each other, and if they can, they'll use that very slow backing away, retreat behaviour, but if that doesn't work, they'll end up having a fight. But not all aggression is obvious. Cats are very good at using passive aggression, and as humans, that's very easy for us to miss, especially because cats are so much lower than we are. So cats will stare at each other, and because their line of sight is so much lower than ours, it is actually quite difficult for us to see, because we're not always aware of what they're looking at, because we can't see, just because they're so much lower than us. But if you watch two cats, you think, oh, what are you looking at? There's another cat, oh, and they're staring back. So just, watch your cats outside in your own homes, and you'll start to see a lot of staring behaviour. And that's a passive aggression from cats. They can also block movement or block access to resources. So in households, in multi-cat households, we see a lot of staring, and we see a lot of cats sitting in doorways like this cat here. So this cat is looking pretty innocent, just minding their own business. No. They're preventing another cat from entering this doorway. And inside there is all the food, the litter trays, the toys, the scratching posts, the favourite human. And this cat is just saying, nope, you're not getting access to any of that. I'm controlling your movements. And again, that's really easy for us to miss. We have to be aware it exists in the first place, and we have to be actively looking for it. And then there's play. Or is it aggression? It's really hard to tell the difference. When cats are swatting each other and they're chasing each other and they're having a rough and tumble wrestling match. Is that play or is it aggression? Are you confident in telling that in your own cats? I'm not. I've got 2 brothers and I'm like, oh, do I need to intervene? Is this play or is it flipping into aggression? So play is normally silent, but aggression can get quite noisy. But I wouldn't be confident in just relying on that. I think if play is getting a bit too rough, then I will try to break it up. How do we break up cat play that's getting a bit too rough? Do we go in there and separate it with our hands? Someone thinks that's a funny idea. Yeah, no, don't do that. You'll just get very sore hands. So what I would do is just use a remote distraction technique. Like, rush out of the room going, oh my god, that's exciting, look at that. And the cat's like, oh, what is it then? Or clap your hands, or bang your hands on a wall, or just make some kind of noise or excitement elsewhere. And that might be enough to split them up. What we don't want to do is spray them with water or anything like that, because if they are having a fight and we make that situation even more unpleasant for them, they're just going to associate that feeling of unpleasantness with the other cat and make them more likely to fight with each other in the future. It's also not a very nice thing to do from an individual cat's welfare situation. They might also think, what are you doing? You're meant to be my favourite human, you're meant to look after me, and now you've turned into a monster. So you might create problems between yourself and the cat as well. So try to split unpleasant behaviour up using a more remote distraction technique rather than get involved directly. Okay, so the sense of smell is the most important sense for cats. We're rubbish at smelling stuff, but cats are really good at smelling stuff. Their sense of smell is more acute than ours, but they also have a second olfactory organ. So they have their nose just like we do, so they'll sniff the air like this wee cat here is doing. But they also do what we call a flaming response. So they have an extra olfactory organ situated in the roof of the mouth, just behind the front teeth, the top front teeth. And they suck in air, and it goes up into the bomber nasal organ, and it allows them to detect different types of scent in the air, including pheromones. So they can be aware of more detail in the air than we are. And that helps them to identify each other as individuals, but what sex you are as a cat, what your reproductive status is as a cat, what your health is as a cat, etc. So they can tell all of that through their sense of smell. I mean, I have no idea how healthy you are, whether you're male or female. I mean, I have no idea, because our sense of smell is not that good, but cats can work all that out just through their sense of smell. They use their sense of smell for different things. They use their sense of smell for communicating with each other, for communicating with themselves, and for orientating themselves around the environment. So as I've already said, they can use their sense of smell for identifying individual cats and also people or dogs, whoever their bonded individuals are. They can recognise members of the same social group, and if they don't recognise the smell, they know that that cat is not a member of the same social group, so that's a potential threat. They also use the sense of smell to avoid coming into contact with each other, and that's how they prevent social conflict. In an ideal world, that's how they would prevent coming into social conflict with each other. So they use urine marking as a way to say, I am using the hunting area right now, you wait your turn. Okay, so cat A might go off into the hunting area, and while they're doing all their cat stuff, hunting, climbing trees, scratching trees, they will be depositing urine marks all around. If cat B was to come along and smell those urine marks, and the smell was really strong, very fresh, they would think, maybe it's not the best time to use the hunting ground at the moment because we might come across cat A. And if we come across cat A, there's a very good chance we're going to have a fight. And that's very stressful, and it's going to threaten my survival. If they wait a little bit, and wait until the smell of the urine fades slightly, they know that cat A hasn't been there for a while and is unlikely to be in the vicinity, so it's safe to use a hunting ground then. If they leave it too long and the smell of the urine has faded quite a lot, then cat A is due to come back to the hunting area, so might just suddenly reappear again. In the wild, so in a community situation, in a feral colony situation, how many times would a cat hunt in a day, do you think? Once? 5 times? 10 times? Twice? 15? 20? 10 to 20 times in a day. But cats are also crepuscular, so they would be naturally more active at dawn and dusk. So those 10 to 20 hunting attempts would be clustered around dawn and dusk, more or less. So the more cats we add to the environment, the more likely they're going to come across each other at dawn and dusk. So it's harder for them to avoid each other because we love cats and we keep adding cats to the environment. So it's harder and harder for them to avoid each other. But in an ideal world where there's fewer cats, they would not be coming into physical contact with each other because they could use this urine marking traffic light system. Okay. They also use their sense of smell to identify aspects of the environment. So you can see this cat here is rubbing his cheeks on a box. So we've all seen cats rub their cheeks on the sides of sofas, table legs, our legs, and they're labelling these parts of their environment as safe. So they really usually only do this in their core area, in the places where they can relax, because these facial pheromones are associated with positive feelings, relaxed feelings. You don't want to remind yourself to be relaxed where there's actual danger. So we wouldn't see it too far away from their core area because that wouldn't be safe. On the other hand, we will see cats using urine marking or spraying urine in areas where it is actually dangerous. So they're actually using urine marking to tell themselves this is a potential danger zone. So out in the hunting area, they use urine spraying to keep distance between each other. But if they spray urine in the core area, in our homes, we know that something in the house is worrying the cat because they're telling themselves there's a potential threat in this very part of the home, in my core area where I should be feeling safe. So there's 2 different reasons for spraying urine. And I quite often hear from people saying, but female cats don't spray, and sterilised males don't spray, but they do. Any cat can spray, regardless of their sex or sterilisation status. Entire males might be more likely to spray when they're out and about, but when we're thinking about core areas and cats spraying to remind themselves to be vigilant because there's a potential threat, really there's not much difference in between sexes and neuter status. Any cat can spray. Okay. Want to think about a little bit about visual communication now. So we are very visual species. We're not great with our sense of smell. We can hear stuff, but unless you're really musical, you might not hear nuances and different sounds. But we are quite good at looking at things and looking at detail. So when we look at cats, we want to largely be looking at their faces, but also their overall body postures and what their tails look like. And piloerection, that just means whether their hair is standing up on end or not. So in dogs, we talk about hackles being raised. We don't talk about it that much in cats, but they also do experience that. It might be just their back, but I think more often it's their tail that goes up first, but their whole body can fluff up as well. So, another quiz for you. This cat, look at their body language. Look at their face. Look at, you can't see the ears. There's a reason for that. Look at where the legs are, the belly is, the tail is going to be sticking out here somewhere. Look at this cat. What is the motivation underlying this cat's body language? Is it self-defense, play, dominance, or appeasement? So again, appeasement is just an individual's way of saying, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean anything by that, let's just resolve this conflict peacefully. Okay, most people have voted now, so let's see what you've said. So most people have said that cat who was lying down on their side was using self-defense against the other cat. 19% thought it was play, 6% thought it was dominance, and 15% thought it was appeasement. Let's go back and have a look at this cat again. Would you play with this cat? This cat? Would you? You're a braver person than I if you play with this cat. For those of you who said this is appeasement, does anyone want to offer an opinion why you thought that was appeasement? What is it about this cat that made you think they're saying, I'm sorry, I'm no threat to you, please leave me alone? Is it because dogs sometimes get into this position when they're appeasing other dogs or people? Maybe. So when dogs are appeasing other dogs or people, they do expose the vulnerable throat area and belly area. Because if they're exposing these areas, they're saying, look, I'm really no threat to you, you could kill me in an instant. This cat is saying the opposite. What is this cat displaying? Yes? Claws? Anything else? Teeth? Yes. So this cat isn't really displaying their vulnerable parts. They're displaying all 5 sets of weapons. Very sharp, deadly weapons. If this was appeasement, what would we expect this cat to do? Walk away. Yeah. Just say, okay, you're no threat to me, I'm going to walk away. What is this cat doing? Getting bigger. They're increasing their threat. So they definitely don't think this is an appeasement gesture. They're getting ready to defend themselves. What is likely to happen? What happens next? Yeah. So this cat is likely to grab this cat with their forepaws, sink their teeth into their neck, and ruck with the back legs. So like disemboweling movement. That's what is likely to happen next. So this is the face of a killer, not a playful face, not an appeasing face. Okay. So that face told me a lot. The rest of the body didn't really help very much. The face did. So we were looking at the eyes, the ears. I was also looking at the whiskers. So that cat, we didn't even see the ears. They were so far back. And that's because they were expecting to get into a fight. So ears are very vulnerable to injury. They're quite delicate parts of the head. So if they think they're going to get into a fight, they'll get the ears out of the way. So they'll flatten the ears. So the more threatened a cat feels, the further back the ears are likely going to be. Whereas in a relaxed cat, the ears are going to be in more of a neutral position. We also want to look at the eye shape. So here, the cat's eyes are sort of almond-shaped. This cat, the eyes are getting a bit bigger. We can see some frown lines in the forehead here, so we can see that the eyebrows are lifting up. So the eyes are getting bigger. That allows more light into the eyes so that they can see, they can gather more information, so they know, is it worth fighting? Is there escape routes? Can I actually run away and use avoidance? This cat isn't very happy, are they? So we've got airplane ears, the whiskers are beginning to bunch forward, the eyes are sort of slanting down the way, so there's quite a lot of tension in this cat's face. This cat is very fearful. Again, you see the airplane ears and quite dilated pupils up here. This cat is very fearful, but the tail is actually sticking out, which I'm surprised at. So for a cat that looks like this, I would expect the tail to be more in. So maybe he's not as fearful as his head leads us to believe. And then this cat is fearful, he's feeling threatened, but he's ready to do something about it. He's ready to fight, whereas this cat looks like they're more ready to run away. And they're perched on all four paws so that they are ready to run away. And that tells us that he's really not relaxed at all. If his paws were tucked under, that would suggest he's a little bit more relaxed. But as the paws are untucked, he's ready to run away at a moment's notice. We also want to look at the tail and the rest of the body. So as I said, with that other cat, I would expect the tail to be more tucked into the body. This tail is probably quite tightly tucked in, so you probably wouldn't be able to easily move the tail yourself. The cat is actively hugging it into their body, whereas this cat is much more relaxed and the tail is out. This tail is very friendly, so if you see cats walking up to you with a tail up with a slight curve at the top, that's quite a friendly tail. And I love it when I see my cats. So they might be milling around, and then I'll walk towards them and they'll notice me, and the tail just suddenly goes up with a curve. And it's just the best feeling in the world to see the cat's tail just go doing, because they like me. And that just makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So tails are really, they tell us a lot about how the cat's feeling. So this is a nice friendly tail. This tail tells us that this cat is very frightened, is feeling very threatened. So this is sort of Halloween cat with the arched back, and this is piloerection. So this cat's very aroused, and the fur is standing on end, so it's looking really spiky. Okay. So, apologies to the people who've already seen this video, but I want you to look at this video and tell me what you think is going on. So look at the body and try to figure out what this cat's underlying emotional state is. And I want you to tell me why you think that. So tell me what you're actually seeing. Describe what you're seeing. So, what's her tail doing? Swishing around. You did just quickly see her eyes there. What does her eyes look like? Fairly almond shaped. What about her pupils? They're not black. Her eyes aren't black, so her pupils are fairly constricted. They're not dilated. Is she a long-haired cat or a short-haired cat? Long. Wait for it. She suddenly becomes a short-haired cat. Look, she's a short-haired cat. What happened? Why did you think she was long-haired?
There's something behind the fence that walked past.
There is something behind the fence, yes. So she's really interested in what's behind the fence. And that made her aroused, physiologically aroused. So she had a stress response in her body, so adrenaline was released. It was more than sort of 3 minutes, so she probably had cortisol released as well, so these are stress hormones. And that made her fur stand up on end. So she looked fluffy, she looked like a long-haired cat, but she's not. We can see she's a short-haired cat. Her tail was also swishing from side to side. That also tells us that she's aroused about something. But do we think it's positive arousal or negative arousal? I can hear noises, I just can't make them out. I can't make out if it was positive or negative. I think she's fairly neutral. There's some ambivalent information going on there. I think she's interested in what's behind the fence, but she's maybe slightly frustrated that she can't actually get to it as well. So there's maybe a little bit of a mix of positive and negative feelings there. But I don't think it's a particularly high arousal feeling, whatever it is. I think there's more of a physiological stress response going in there than an actual feeling. Anybody want to guess what was behind the fence?
But a bird.
It was a bird. It was a pheasant. So probably 3 times bigger than she is. She's a small cat. Okay, that's her again. So behavioural development. The keys, the most significant stages of behavioural development for cats, at least in terms that I want to share with you today, are the prenatal period and the socialisation period. So the prenatal period. Now, as cat owners, we don't really have any control over this at all, but I think it's worth you knowing about it. If you are buying a cat from a breeder, you could ask about that kitten's early life experience, including before they were born, because it's such an important period. So, anything that the mum experiences when she's pregnant can have a huge effect on her unborn kittens and how they develop physiologically, physically, and behaviourally. And this is because her stress hormones, what she eats, that can pass through the placenta and actually physically affect the fetus, the unborn kittens. So we really want our mums to be as relaxed as possible while they're pregnant so that we can have well-balanced kittens. If she's really stressed, that can actually make the physiological stress response of the kittens much more sensitive. So they'll grow up into more reactive adults. So if they come across a potentially challenging situation, they're more likely to react badly to it than kittens born to a relaxed mother. The second period I want to sort of raise is the socialisation period. So this is after they're born, between the weeks of about 2 and 7 weeks of age, and this is when the brain is developing at its fastest. Everything that the kitten experiences will affect how the brain is developing, and that can help create a template of what they expect in later life. This creates a template of what's normal and safe, but also unsafe. So as kittens, we want them to experience everything that they might come across in later life, but experience it in a really positive way so that they learn that this is normal and safe, and this is what they expect to come across. Anything that they don't come across during the first 7 weeks of age, but then meet later on, is likely to be met with a feeling of fear, is likely to cause them to feel threatened. And as we know with their interactions with other cats, if they're feeling threatened, they can use avoidance or they can use aggression to deal with that feeling of fear. They can take themselves out of the situation or they can repel the threat using aggression. Sometimes they can't always use avoidance. Maybe they're in a cage, maybe they're cornered, or otherwise their movements are restricted. So sometimes they have to use aggression, they don't have the choice of using avoidance. And of course this will also be influenced by how confident the cat is and their previous learning experiences. So if they've been in a threatening situation before and they've used avoidance and it's worked, then they might try to use avoidance again in the future. But if they've been in a threatening situation before and avoidance didn't work, or it wasn't an available option, and they used aggression, and aggression did work to resolve that situation, they might be more likely to choose aggression next time. So they're always learning what works and what doesn't work to keep themselves safe, and that can influence their future behaviour. If they want to use aggression to repel the threat, but they can't, because there's maybe a window in the way, or there's something in the way, but there's another cat or a human right next to them, they might turn around and aggress on the non-target person or cat. They're not doing it on purpose, they just need to get that aggression out of them, and it's just unfortunate that this other person or cat is there. Now, if we think back to social behaviour in cats, bonds between cats are so fragile. It's not like bonds between people and bonds between dogs. We need to be around people. Dogs need to be around other dogs in general. Cats don't need to be around other cats. Cats are solitary survivors. They can do perfectly well by themselves, if not better in some circumstances. So if a bond is broken, there's no evolutionary need for them to fix that bond. So it's our jobs as cat owners, of multi-cat cat owners, to try to maintain that bond as much as possible. So if there's anything that we think our cats are worried about, we need to try to address that before they feel the need to use aggression, both for their own sakes, but for the sakes of everyone near them and the future relationships of everyone in that household. Cats also don't have an inbuilt need to be with people. So we have to teach them during the socialisation period that people are nice, that we're normal, we're safe. If they don't learn that at a young age, then it'll be very difficult for us to teach them that later on. So if they're only coming across people after the age of maybe 7 weeks or so, then again they might find us threatening and use avoidance or aggression towards us because they're frightened of us. So to combat this, we need to make sure that they are being well socialised. So cats need to come across lots of different types of people: men, women, children, older people, people who have very different physical appearances, people who wear different types of clothing, whether it's you're probably not walking into your houses with motorbike helmets on, I'm assuming, but you might walk into your house with a rucksack on, or carrying shopping bags, or a walking stick. You might, I don't know if it's bad luck to put up an umbrella in Singapore. In the UK it's bad luck to put up an umbrella inside, but we do it anyway because we need to dry our umbrellas. But if you're putting up an umbrella to dry it, you're changing your silhouette, and that might frighten the cat because they might think, oh my god, that was a human, but what is it now? Because you've just suddenly morphed into a weird shaped thing. So we need cats to learn that humans come in lots of different shapes and sizes and colours and smells and physical abilities, so that then they can generalise that to the human population as a whole. We also need them to learn that everyday experiences are normal and safe. So what kind of experiences do cats need to learn about to fit into our human lives? Noises. So that might be external noises like fireworks, or it might be household noises like washing machines, hair dryers, vacuum cleaners. We might want them to wear collars, although for indoor-only cats that's less necessary. In parks, is there a requirement for cats to wear collars? No? Okay, that's fine. So we probably can score that one off here. Going in cat carriers, because they might have to they will have to go to the vets at some point, even if it's just for their routine vaccinations and so on. But they might have to go to boarders or go in the car go in a carrier for other reasons. They might go in a car, and they'll have to get familiar with other types of household objects like vacuum cleaners and so on. So we need to expose our kittens to these things, but gradually and positively. If they have a bad experience in the socialisation period, they're much more likely to learn that's a bad thing. If they don't experience it in the socialisation period, they're still likely to learn that's a bad thing when they meet it later in life. So they need to have positive experiences of these things early on. Play behaviour. Toys are really important for kittens to develop a nice rounded behavioural repertoire. So they need to be given lots of different types of toys, given opportunities to play with each other and with objects. But when we're playing with them ourselves, we need to do it in a very specific way, or not in a very specific way. Who here, is anyone willing to admit, who's done this with their cats to encourage their cats to pounce on their fingers or their feet under the duvet cover? Come on, I know at least 65% of you have done this. That's just a figure I popped into my head. But definitely, there are people in the room who have done this. I know that for a fact. It's nice to play with our cats. When they're small kittens and they're pouncing on us, and that's still sore, so I don't know why people do it, but it's less sore than if it's a fully grown cat. So I know someone who has a Maine Coon, so these are big cats, they're like 7-8 kilograms, and this cat had been taught to chase fingers and feet under duvet covers. So this cat grew up thinking, that's how you play with people, including small children. This cat got to 7 or 8 kilograms and was still playing with people that way, and would jump out from behind piano stools or sofas and just attack people's legs. This was not an aggressive cat. This was not a cat who was frightened and using aggression to repel a threat. This was a cat who had learned this is how you interact with people, because this is what I was taught to do with people as a young age. But when you're a 7-8 kilogram Maine Coon who's almost bigger than the child, that's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for the cat to do that to anyone of any age. And in Singapore, where you're more likely to maybe have bare legs or bare feet, that can be incredibly dangerous. In the UK, where we're wearing jeans and boots and everything inside because it's so cold, we have a little bit more protection. Still sore, but we don't want to be encouraging that. We want to teach cats at a young age how to play with people. And that always involves a toy, not bits of human body. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about normal behaviours in cats now. Very normal behaviour, sleeping in a box of jigsaw pieces. I can't think of anything less comfortable to sleep on. Anyway, so the normal behaviour of cats can sometimes be perceived by people as being problematic. So normal behaviours are just behaviours that naturally occur in the species. They have evolved to be adaptive responses to get food, get a mate, to survive, to enjoy life, hopefully. And they are reinforced through being successful at getting food, at getting water, at getting a mate, or avoiding threats. So cats have instinctive behaviours that can be reinforced through learning. Sometimes behaviours can be reinforced by people that we might not think is particularly human-friendly. Sometimes the environment makes cats do behaviours to a different degree than what we find particularly human-friendly. So when we think about problematic behaviours, they're usually just normal cat behaviours that we find inconvenient. So this might arise because of the owner's lack of understanding of natural behaviour. So, cats have claws. What do they do with those claws? They scratch furniture. That's a normal behaviour. If they were outside, they would be scratching tree trunks, scratching along the ground. But inside a house, and they're looking for something that resembles a tree trunk, that might be our very expensive sofa. So that's a normal cat behaviour. There's nothing wrong with that cat, physically or mentally or behaviourally. That's just a very normal cat behaviour. But it's a problem for us. Okay. But sometimes the cat is doing things because they're trying to entertain themselves, because they're bored, because we haven't given them enough to do. But sometimes it can also reflect a more significant welfare concern. So toileting, for example. Cats go to the toilet, that's normal. Where the cat goes to the toilet isn't of particular concern to themselves. We might want them to go to the toilet in a particular place. And most cats oblige us by doing that, but not always. Now that's not necessarily a problem for the cat, it's a problem for us. But what if it is a problem for the cat? What if it reflects pain or illness, or that the cat is really chronically stressed in their environment? Still a normal behaviour, but the cat is struggling to cope with something. So, we're going to talk about normal behaviours that might present as problematic for us as people, but that might also reflect a welfare concern for cats themselves. So we'll start off with normal toileting behaviour then. So cats will normally go to the toilet, and when I say go to the toilet, I mean just to get rid of waste product, whether that's urine or faeces, like we do. That might sound like a really weird thing to say, but it will become obvious why I'm saying that in a minute. So cats who are just going to the toilet would normally find a quiet, private, secluded place to go to the toilet. If you're squatting to go to the toilet, whether you're a human or a cat, you're vulnerable to attack. Okay, so if you're suddenly attacked by a predator or a competitor, you're less able to defend yourself. So when you're going to the toilet, you want to try to find somewhere private and secluded. There's a reason why we lock ourselves away in the toilet, in a toilet cubicle to go to the toilet. Obviously, because of our social behaviour, we think it's a taboo thing. We can't admit to going to the toilet to each other. But the reason that's evolved is because it's a vulnerable behaviour. That's why we lock ourselves away. And it's the same with cats. They don't lock themselves away, but they'll try to find somewhere safe, secluded, where they're less vulnerable to attack. They would normally, if they're out and about in the wild, they would normally find a sort of sandy, soily substrate to toilet in, because it's easy to dig up, to create holes, and then to cover the urine and the faeces in. They don't want to draw attention to their presence, because remember, they're prey species as well as predators. They're vulnerable to attack. So they don't want to be leaving urine and faeces everywhere, because that would alert a potential predator to their presence. So they will prefer to cover that up. So they need to have sandy soil to cover it up. But they can learn quite a strong preference for toileting substrates when they're very young. So cats or kittens are born quite helpless. Now, I don't know how many of you have come across newborn kittens. Hands up if you have. Just a couple of you. Okay, so for those of you who haven't, you might not be aware that newborn kittens can't actually go to the toilet by themselves. The mum actually has to lick their bum to stimulate them to pee and poo. If we have an orphaned kitten that we're hand rearing, we have to do that for them. So we use a piece of wet cloth or cotton wool to stimulate them to go to the toilet. What a lot of hand rearers do is put the kitten on their lap on a towel and then stimulate them to go to the toilet. So what substrate is the kitten learning that's a suitable substrate to go to the toilet on? Towels, soft furnishings. So what we should be doing is placing the cat in a litter tray on an appropriate substrate, so they feel that under their feet while they're going to the toilet, so they associate the two things. So when they need to go to the toilet, when they're able to do it themselves, they will seek that substrate out, not the towels, not the soft furnishings. So we can, although there's an instinctive preference towards sandy soils, we can manipulate that at a young age because of what they feel under their feet when they're going to the toilet. Cats would also naturally look for somewhere that's far enough away from their feeding and drinking sites so as not to cause contamination, but not too far away that they risk attack from another cat or from a predator. So we want to be able to separate their feeding sites and their drinking sites from their toileting sites. That's what they would naturally do themselves, and we should be aiming to replicate that in the house as well. And some cats, just because cats like to be difficult, like to have separate locations for urinating versus defecating. So sometimes, even if you've just got one cat in the house, it's useful to have 2 different litter trays. So the general rule of thumb for providing cats with resources is 1 resource per cat plus 1. So if you've got 1 cat in the house, you need 2 litter trays. If you've got 2 cats in the house, you need how many litter trays? 3, and so on. Okay. Oh, I should ask, what's going on in this top photo? What can you see? People at the back might not be able to see the fine detail. Sorry? Oh, no. First of all, how many litter trays are here? There are 3 litter trays. You can just see the corner of one here. How many litter trays are in this photo? From the cat's perspective. 1. They've heard this before. There's just 1 big litter tray from this cat's perspective. I mean, look, this is a Maine Coon, big cat. This is a kitten litter tray. Maybe that's not appropriate. Yes, it's a small bathroom, granted, they don't have a lot of space. But they're insisting that the cats have to go to the toilet in the bathroom. So all 3 litter trays are clumped together in the one space. This is a 2-cat household, and they're both big Maine Coons. Also, you see this litter here is quite a bright white. This litter here is kind of a murky grey colour. This is the same litter. It's the same type of litter. Why does it look so different? This one is saturated with urine. Absolutely saturated with urine. That's why it's a different colour. And you can just see the edge here is also saturated. So this litter tray is getting to the point of saturation as well. Is this an ideal toileting situation? This cat, he's a bomb-proof cat. He is resilient. His brother, on the other hand, where do you think his brother toilets? I know you have no idea about these 2 cats, but you can guess. In the litter trays? No, his brother toilets in the bath and the shower, in the base of the shower. Any guesses why? First of all, dirty litter tray. This is smelly, to say the least. Again, bomb-proof cat. The owners actually have an odorizer, is that the right word? Like a smelly thing to try to mask the smell, one of those little things that puff out air. So they know the bathroom smells. Don't know why they don't just clean, that would be easier to just clean the litter trays rather than make this place really smelly. So we have dirty litter trays. We also only really have one toileting resource. From a human perspective, this is 3 litter trays, but from a cat perspective, this is only one toileting resource. And for 2 cats sharing a household, they need to be able to access a toilet freely without walking past another cat, or without having to pass through a threshold that another cat might be blocking. So this cat is still willing to use a litter tray, which means he's going to be in the bathroom quite a lot, or hanging around the bathroom door, which means his brother might not feel confident enough, because they're not particularly bonded either, these 2 cats, even though they're brothers. He's not willing to go in there he's not willing to risk fighting his brother just to use a dirty litter tray. And because cats want to find somewhere safe and secure to go to the toilet, the next best place for his brother is the bath, because the bath actually provides quite a lot of privacy and security because of the high sides. And the same with the shower cubicle. It's quite a secluded area. The danger with this going on for quite a long time is that his brother develops a preference for hard surfaces for going to the toilet. So that behaviour, even if we can address it with cleaning the litter tray and making the litter trays more accessible, he might still have a preference for hard surfaces, because this problem has been going on for quite a long time. Okay. What about this situation? What do we think about covered litter trays? Good or bad? It's up to the individual cat. So if you have good litter tray hygiene, as in the caregiver, and cleans regularly, then the smell shouldn't be too bad in there. But if we have this sort of situation and then there's a hood over it, the smell in there is going to be unbearable. So cats would avoid going inside it. Some cats might also feel even more vulnerable. Like this cat, his head is stuck in a corner. He can't really see anything happening. His bum's sticking out. He might feel really vulnerable to attack. So although this cat is quite happy going to the toilet in this situation. Not every cat would be. So some cats prefer an open litter tray. Most cats would prefer a high-sided but ceiling-free litter tray with sandy soil in it, a really deep sandy soil that's cleaned on a regular basis, so any soiled material is removed immediately. That's what most cats would prefer. And free access, without having to walk past another cat or a dog or a small alien child. They want to be able to go to the toilet when they want. Cats don't queue. If they need the toilet, they'll go to the toilet. If they can't go to the toilet in a litter tray, they'll go in a plant pot, a bath, a shower, a bed, whatever resembles a safe place for them. Okay, so normal toileting behaviour is purely to eliminate waste products from the body. They will try to find a safe private place with what they perceive as being a suitable toileting substrate, preferably one that allows burying in, but if they've learned otherwise, then they will choose otherwise. So, if a cat is no longer using a litter tray, we don't ask necessarily, why is the cat peeing in the corner of the room? We ask, why is the cat no longer using the litter tray? That's our first point of investigation. Has something changed about the litter tray? Is there a new cat or a dog or a child in the house blocking access? Have we got visitors staying and they're actually staying in the spare room where the cat's litter tray is? Or have we moved the litter tray because we've got guests staying? Have we got building work going in our house? Have we got decorators in or others or builders in doing stuff in our home that's causing some kind of disruption or making it more difficult for the cat to access the litter tray? Have we got too few litter trays in the house? So if we've got 2 cats, have we got 3 litter trays that are well distributed around the house? Or have we clumped them all together and there's another cat using it or has already used it or is in the way? Has the cat been disturbed while using the toilet? Cats learn very quickly. Remember, they're a prey species themselves. So they have to keep themselves safe. And that means that they learn from threatening situations, or they learn very quickly what a potential threatening situation is. So if they've been using the litter tray and something aversive has happened, like a loud noise has happened, or a dog has gone to sniff them, or I've even heard of owners thinking, oh, the cat is otherwise indisposed, I'll put their flea spot-on treatment on them, or otherwise give them medication while they're doing the toilet because they're less likely to attack them or run away. So they might have learnt an aversion against the litter tray because something nasty happened to them while they were using it. Have we changed substrate? So maybe there's a new brand become available, or we've been convinced by a snazzy advertising campaign and we've been convinced to try a new substrate. Maybe the cat doesn't actually recognise that substrate as being a toileting substrate. Or maybe it actually hurts their paws because some toileting substrates are quite jaggedy. Some, especially ones that are highly perfumed, might actually give off sort of a caustic substance which can actually irritate their paws. Some substrates, like the Maine Coon with the white litter tray, that litter is actually marketed as lasting for a whole month for each individual cat. That's tempting, isn't it? Because that means you only need to empty your litter tray once a month. Or, yes, so you might not be cleaning appropriately. You might not be removing feces quickly enough or wet litter often enough. And cats, they don't actually seem to mind very much about sharing the same litter tray with another cat as long as there's free access. But what they don't like doing is using a soiled tray. So we need to be very quick in removing the soiled litter. And then there's also pain. So if there's any situation where a cat has stopped using their litter tray, I want to rule out pain as a priority. So I would be getting that cat to the vet to be vet checked. There's lots of different types of pain that can stop a cat from using a litter tray. We'll talk about feline interstitial cystitis or urinary tract infections in a little bit. But it might just be the cat's maybe getting some joint pain and just climbing into the litter tray is too painful. And again, cats we say that's a litter tray, but the cat isn't really bothered about if it's a litter tray or not. They will just go to where they think is an appropriate toileting site. And if they can find a safe, secluded place that has an appropriate substrate that doesn't hurt them to use, they will use that. They're not going to bother using the litter tray. Or they might have constipation and it's just been sore or difficult for them to use the litter tray and they associate the litter tray with pain. So they stop using the litter tray and they go somewhere else that they haven't associated with pain in the past. So that's the kind of questions I would be asking if a cat has stopped using their litter tray and is toileting elsewhere in the house. Now, sometimes cats like to be difficult again, so they might continue using the litter tray for urinating but not for defecating or vice versa. And again, that might come down to cats having a different substrate preference for toileting, for urinating or defecating. Okay. Any questions about that so far? No? Okay. Let's move on to spraying then. And we'll have a break in a couple of minutes. I just want to kind of talk about all the relevant stuff before we move on to a slightly different topic. Spraying urine. So we've already talked about cats using urine or spraying urine around the hunting area to reduce coming into social conflict with each other. So that's one way that they use urine, and that's probably what this cat is doing out and about. And this is different from them squatting to go to the toilet. That's why I said earlier, and what I wanted to explain, that normal toileting is just eliminating waste products, because that's what we do when we go to the toilet. We don't use urine or feces as a way to communicate with other animals, with other humans, or with ourselves, but cats do. So spraying is a very different behaviour to just squatting to go to the toilet to eliminate waste products. So spraying is a communication behaviour. We've talked about the territorial spray marking. But what happens if a cat sprays inside their core area? This is most often due to some kind of change in the environment that the cat is finding challenging. So the spraying is to tell themselves, this part of my environment is potentially dangerous. There's something threatening in this area, so I need to label this as a potential danger zone. So whenever I'm in this area and I smell the smell, I'm on alert for potential danger. And because it's a warning signal, it has to stay really fresh. So cats will top it up on a regular basis to make sure it remains a really salient signal in their environment. And unfortunately, the most common cause of spraying in the household for cats is the presence of other cats. Now in the UK, because we tend to live on, or most of us live on sort of ground floor situation, and our cats can go outside, it might be the presence of other cats staring through windows or doorways. In Singapore, it's more likely to be other cats living in the house because they're not really seeing other cats peering through windows. That would be a bit worrying if you're 15 floors up and there's just a cat staring in the window. So, but the area where they're spraying can tell us a lot about what's worrying them. So we have to, rather than with the toileting, and we're thinking, why is the cat no longer toileting there? With the spraying, we're asking, why is the cat spraying here? What is it about this part of the household that's worrying them? And that's probably easier in a Singapore context, actually, because you don't have to worry about the outside. So in the UK, I would be looking at, are they spraying on external doors and windows? If so, it's probably something outside that's worrying them. But they might be here and looking, maybe a cat is up on an upstairs window in the neighbouring house. So it might be that they only see them from here, not from here. So it can get a little bit confusing. But if they're doing it in internal doorways, then it's something inside the house. And if it's internal doorways and there's some kind of conflict happening in the thoroughways and access entries and exits to rooms and things like that. And in most cases it's other cats. But it could be anything, any kind of change to the environment. We were speaking earlier this morning about changes to the household, so maybe a grown-up child moving away to go to university. It could be the addition of a baby to the family. It could be somebody's working hours changes and they're out of the house for longer, or they're in the house for longer. It could be building work, decorating. It could be really noisy neighbours have moved in next. It could be a lot of different things. Cats are very sensitive. So we have to, I think I said earlier that my cat consultations would be 3 hours minimum. There's a lot of questions you have to ask to try to work out why cats are doing what they are doing. It's not always obvious. I mean, it could be something as hard to work out as the boiler switching on. So I know, I think it was a dog rather than a cat, but they had a noise phobia and they were barking. They would start barking at the same time every day and no one could work out why until the behaviourists went and they heard a very faint noise, just a click, and it was a boiler, the pilot light of the boiler coming on, and that was scaring the dog, and that's why the dog was barking at the same time every day, because that's when the heating was coming on in the house. So it can be something really as obscure as that. So, cats are leaving a warning message to themselves, and to keep it a nice, salient message, they need to top it up on a regular basis. And they top it up based on how smelly the urine mark is. So, obviously we don't want stinky urine in our house. Sprayed urine is smellier than eliminated urine because it might have anal gland secretions in it as well, so it's particularly stinky. How do we go about cleaning that urine? Enzymatic cleaner, exactly. Why enzymatic cleaner and not bleach, for instance? Any ideas? Bleach and urine are made up of the same component, ammonia. So if you use bleach to clean urine with, you're just making it smell like another cat has peed there, which is going to make the situation a lot worse. If you use a non-enzymatic cleaner, so a non-biological washing agent, you're going to just dilute the smell, so you're going to make it fainter, but the cat will still be able to smell it. So is that going to increase a cat's topping up, or decrease it? Increase it, because you've just made their warning signal less salient, so they have to top it up more regularly. So to really get rid of the smell, we need to clean it using an enzymatic cleaner. We need to break down the smelly components of the urine. Is that enough to stop the cat from urinating? From spraying urine? No, because the threat is still there. We haven't done anything to address the underlying motivation for it. So we have to do both things. We have to work out what is threatening the cat here, what is causing them to feel unsafe. We have to address that issue, and then we can deal with the smell to stop them from going back. If we just address the issue but we don't deal with the smell will encourage them to keep going back. So we need to deal with both issues. If this is a chronic issue and it's been going on for a long time, do be aware that urine might have soaked into the plasterboard, into the skirting boards, into the underlay. In the UK we usually have carpets and underlay and then floorboards. So we might have to get new carpet, underlay, new floorboards, new skirting boards, new plasterboard. It can be expensive. So we want to address these issues as early as possible for our own convenience as well as our cat's welfare. Because this is a welfare issue. It's a normal behaviour, but they're doing it because they feel threatened. So we do need to address this issue. Okay. Let me just deal with feline interstitial cystitis first, and then we can have a quick break, because it is still a toileting issue. So, this is a health issue, but the first sign of this might very well be a change of behaviour, as is the case with a lot of medical issues. So cats who feel pain upon urination might think it's the location, the toilet, the litter tray, that's causing them pain on urination. They don't understand it's an internal thing. So they might try to go somewhere else to go to the toilet. That doesn't hurt them. And some cats, they might constantly try somewhere new each time they need the toilet. And if you've got cystitis, you need to go to the toilet quite frequently. They're constantly changing location. Not every cat will. Some cats will continue to use their litter tray. But if you're seeing a cat who's using lots of different locations to go to the toilet, that would be a red flag for me. I would immediately think, that sounds like a UTI to me. We might see cats using the litter tray but spending a lot of time in the litter tray, sort of squatting, standing up, moving around, circling, because they're anticipating the pain. But also it's quite difficult for them to pass urine. They might cry while they're passing urine or trying to pass urine because it's painful for them. Male cats might also stand up because it's painful for them to squat if their urethra is all inflamed. So it might look like they're spraying. And also when cats spray urine, they tend to produce a small amount of urine. And if they've got cystitis, they tend to produce a small amount of urine, even if they're just trying to empty their bladder. So we need to ask very specific questions. Is this a cat who's trying to pass urine, or are they spraying? They might also, because of the pain and discomfort, spend a lot of time grooming their bottom area, and they might groom to the extent of causing baldness in their lower abdomen and their inner thighs. So again, if you see baldness in this area, definitely take them to the, if you see baldness in any area, take them to the vet. But if you see a baldness in that area, it would potentially indicate a urinary tract infection. Any questions on that so far? No? Okay then. I suggest we take a 12-minute break. Very specific. So if you could be back here at 1:45, please. You might need longer to... Okay, let's get started again then. So we're going to move on to talking about scratching surfaces then. Alright, so we're going to start talking about scratching surfaces. So this is our next problematic behaviour. So cats will scratch surfaces for two different reasons, or very different reasons. So cats will work their nails and their muscles. So their front claws, their front legs, their shoulders, these are what they use to hunt. They're used to climb trees and jump and do lots of different cat things. So they have to keep this part of their body really strong and supple and in good condition. So to do this, they scratch surfaces. So they will find something that's tall or long, stretch right up into it, put their whole body weight into it and drag their claws down. So they're pulling those old sort of used husks from the outer husks from their claws, so to leave the nice shiny sharp ones underneath, and then they're working all the muscles of their forearms. To do this, they will find a suitable substrate that's tall or long, sturdy enough that won't fall over when they lean into it, and that has a vertical grain that won't catch the claws. So the old husks will fall off, but their claws aren't actually getting stuck in it. I'm sure you've all seen cats get their claws stuck in things. It's not very nice, probably quite painful. So if that happens on a cat scratching post, they might not use the cat scratching post again. They'll use something that does the same job but doesn't actually cause them any pain or inconvenience of getting their claws stuck in it. Again, the cat doesn't know that this is a cat scratching post just because it says on the box that we bought it in. Quite a lot of cat scratching posts that we buy are short, much shorter than the cat, especially the cat at full stretch. They're wobbly. So a lot of cats just don't see that as being a cat scratching post. So we might think we're providing them with a cat scratching post, but they don't think we are. However, our sofa's perfect. Okay? But cats also scratch surfaces for communication reasons. And these are very similar to the reasons that they spray urine indoors as well. So they might scratch in areas that are causing them some concern. So remember, cats have scent glands on their paws as well. So when they're scratching, they're actually leaving scent behind. And if the husks fall off their claws, they might also gather at the bottom of the scratched area. So there's a visual communication there as well. So just like the spraying of urine, they're doing it in strategic areas. It's not so much about the surface or the stability, it's about where they're feeling threatened. So we have to look at the surface and think, is the cat just conditioning their claws and their forearms, or are they trying to communicate to themselves that something is dangerous in this area? That can be difficult to tell the difference between because it looks the same behaviour, but it's the area that can help us work it out. So if they're scratching on an unusual surface that doesn't really meet these criteria, but it's a very salient place, like in the middle of the room or right beside a doorway or a window, then that might suggest this is a strategic place and it's something about here that's causing them some concern. But if it's in a place that meets these criteria, like the side of a sofa, sort of round the back of the sofa, then that's maybe just to condition their claws. If it's on the front of the sofa near a doorway, I might start thinking maybe that's more communication. But it can be tricky to work out, so you'd probably want to get a behaviourist involved just to be on the safe side. But before you do that, make sure that your cat does have appropriate cat scratching areas. That might be a tall post like this, or it might be a horizontal one. A lot of cats actually prefer to scratch horizontally rather than vertically. And that preference might change as they age as well. I sometimes find that as cats get older, they prefer more of a horizontal surface. And coir matting, like a doormat, one of these big heavy doormats, they can be quite good for cats, and just scratching to work their nails and their shoulders and their forearms as well. So as your first port of call, make sure that from the cat's perspective, they have somewhere appropriate to work their claws and their forearms. And if you've done that and they're still doing it, then you can start maybe thinking, oh, is there a communication issue going on here? Okay, this is a big topic, fears. Cats can be scared of anything, whether that's humans, dogs, noises, anything. Now, I quite often hear people say, oh, my cat's terrified of X because they had a really traumatic experience with X a couple of years ago or when they were younger. And then I ask them some questions and they, oh, well, I don't actually know any detail because that was before I got the cat, I just assumed it. So it's really easy for us to assume that cats who are scared of things must have had a traumatic experience with it. But actually, more often than not, it's because they've never experienced it before in the socialisation period. So if they didn't experience it in the socialisation period and only experienced it for the first time as an older cat, the chances are they'll be scared of it. Trauma might also play a part. They might have had a bad experience of it in the past, but that shouldn't be our go-to assumption. It could also be just a lack of experience. They might also have some genetic predispositions. So every cat is an individual. Every cat falls somewhere on a continuum between being timid and being very confident. So if you're a more timid cat, you might be more likely to develop fears. And again, coming back to breeding, I know in this room we don't have much control over breeding because we're not breeders, but we shouldn't be breeding from timid cats because they're going to produce timid offspring. So we want our cats to be as confident as possible, and that starts at this parental selection stage. But we can influence it through making sure that the pregnant mums are well cared for, that the kittens have a good start in life through socialisation periods, but that needs to carry on throughout life. We need to protect them from bad experiences and traumatic experiences to make sure that they continue to experience positivity and normality from their perspective. However, if they do develop a fear response, their coping strategies are to avoid, escape, get up high, hide away, or to use aggression. And you've seen this Halloween cat picture before. This cat is clearly scared of this dog, feeling threatened by this dog. So this is really what fear looks like. There's not much more to say about it in terms of the development of fear. What we do about the fear will depend on what they're frightened of. So if they're scared of noises, we will have to deal with that in a certain way. If they're scared of people, we'll deal with that in a certain way. But really, it's the same learning method that we're going to use, which is called desensitization and counter-conditioning. So if a cat is scared of something, first of all, we have to stop exposing them to the scary thing. So no more meeting dogs. So that we're stopping them keep learning that that thing is a scary thing. And then we have to teach them that thing isn't actually scary. And how we do that is we take the thing and make it less scary, pair it with something positive, and then slowly increase the level of intensity, but so slowly that the cat doesn't know. They don't notice that you're increasing the level of intensity of the previously scary thing. So I'll give you an example that's much easier for you to understand. Let's start with noises. If we have a cat who's scared of fireworks, when would be a typical time for fireworks to go off in Singapore? New Year? Okay, so that's just gone, isn't it? And New Year's January, February time? Okay, so you've got half a year more or less in between both of those events, which is a good length of time. In the UK, it tends to be November right through to early January. And then if you live near... They will run out of battery. If you live near a wedding venue, then fireworks just go off all the time. So don't live near a wedding venue in the UK. Can you still hear me up at the back? This sounds quieter for me. Okay. So, you don't want to start the day before New Year or the day before, what you got, National Day. That's a bad time to start. You want to start the day after, so when the fireworks have stopped for a good long period. Okay? So what we would do is we would get recordings of fireworks or whatever noise they're frightened of. You can get these on the Dogs Trust website. You can also just get them from YouTube. What you want to do is make sure that they're good quality recordings. So the ones on Dogs Trust website, they are good quality. They have been designed specifically for this purpose. The ones that you find on YouTube might have been recorded using poorer quality equipment. So just bear that in mind. So what you would do is make sure that the cat is otherwise not exposed to loud noises that they're scared of, like fireworks. And then make sure the cat is nice and relaxed, maybe doing something they enjoy, like getting groomed if that's what they enjoy, getting a nice cheek rub, or being fed something nice. Maybe you've given them a nice puzzle feeder, so they're enjoying themselves. Then you start to play the fireworks, loudly enough that they can hear it, but not loudly enough that they're reacting to it. So we don't want them to show any negative behavioural, body language or behavioural responses, okay? Just do that for a few minutes or until the cat's finished doing whatever they're doing, then stop. Next day, do exactly the same thing. Next day, do exactly the same thing, but turn the volume up a notch. And then, so the process is repeated until eventually you've got a full-blown fireworks display going off in your house and your neighbours will be like, what on earth? So maybe warn your neighbours that you're about to do this. And then if you do it slowly enough, the cat will cope at each stage. And just more than cope, they will stay relaxed. That's what our aim is, for the cat to stay relaxed at each increase of the volume. Because you're keeping them below threshold, you're watching their body language, they're doing something that they enjoy. If you go too quickly and they start to show negative body language, that that they're a bit worried, stop what you're doing. Turn the volume down, stop the recording, allow them to recover, probably wait a full day, start again the next day, but at a lower volume so that you can make sure that you're going to be successful and the cat is going to show relaxed body language so that they can learn something positive about the noise. Okay? That sounds very easy in practice. It's not always that easy. Sometimes the cat has got other things going on. Maybe they're a generally anxious cat. Maybe they're in pain. A high caseload of clinical animal behaviourists, 70% in fact, of behaviour cases have an underlying painful condition. So even if you don't think your cat's in pain, or even if you think, well, what has pain got to do with noise phobias? That's surely unrelated. It is related. So any change in your cat's behaviour, any worrying behaviour, really go and get your cat checked out by the vet. Even if you think this can't possibly be related to anything medical, it could be. So get your cat checked by the vet. Other types of fear, we would use the same process of desensitization and counter conditioning. So if the cat is frightened of people, we make people small. How do we make people small? We can't shrink them, obviously. Far away, we use distance. So we can shrink them in a way because of perspective, further away. People at the back, you look very small. I'm guessing you're not actually small, but it's just because you're further away. So we can use distance to lower the threat of people. So if the cat is frightened of a specific kind of person, we wouldn't start with that kind of person. We would start with a person that they're less frightened of. And then we would ask the person we would get a stooge person, a helper, who's willing to follow our instruction, ask them to go as far away as possible from the cat so the cat is showing relaxed body language. And then if there is a trusted person, that person can play with them, groom them, feed them nice tasty treats. If there's no such person, it might be the person that we're desensitizing them against, who's throwing them treats from a distance. Obviously be careful, don't use huge arm throws because that's just going to scare the cat, so try to be as subtle as possible when throwing the treats. Or you can even use remote food dispensers that are remote controlled. You could do that as well, as long as they're not noisy and otherwise going to scare the cat. And then as long as the cat is showing relaxed body language, you decrease the distance between the person and the cat. Again, always monitoring the cat's body language to make sure that they're under that fear threshold, that they are showing relaxed body language. And then eventually you can start touching the cat, but only very briefly. And then you would build up how much you're touching the cat and for how long. Again, always monitoring the body language, always associating it with something positive. As soon as the cat starts showing unrelaxed body language, is that a word? Non-relaxed body language, you stop. And later you start in an earlier stage and start the process again. Okay, again, there might be more going on with that cat and you might not process through those steps very quickly. Again, if the cat is generally very fearful, if they're in pain, that process is going to be very slow. You might not make any process at all. So again, you want to get the cat checked out by the vet. If the cat's level of fear is so high that you can't turn the volume of the fireworks down low enough, or you can't get the person far enough away, you could maybe speak to your vet about using behavioural medication that lowers the cat's anxiety enough that they can learn something positive about noises or people. But we can't use medication. We're not sedating the cats. We're not just trying to sedate them and make them, dumb to their environment. We're only using the medication to help us progress with the behavioural modification program. So the medication should not be used alone, only with the behavioural modification program. And these behavioural modification programs are complex. They have to be tailored to the individual cat. So I would always recommend that you get professional help with any behaviour problem. I mean, you could try simple things yourself first, but really if you're not seeing immediate results, then try to get professional advice. But the most important thing is don't push the cat. Don't think, the cat will get used to me I just have to show them that I love them and that I don't mean them any harm. So the more I pick them up and squish them, the more they're going to understand that I love them and that they can trust me. They won't learn that. They will just become more frightened of you. So try to resist touching them. Try to resist showing them that you're showering them in love and you're not a nasty person. You really do have to just stop all contact. Anything that they find scary, stop doing that. And then go through that very gradual process of making the scary thing really small so it's not scary anymore, pairing it with something positive, and then slowly building it up. But as I said, if we have a generally anxious cat or a cat who's frightened of lots of things, we have to look at their entire life in the home and see if we can make improvements anywhere else. Because if we can make improvements somewhere else in their life, we can also see faster progress on their specific fears. Just want to touch on inappropriate play, because this can look like aggression. It is aggression of a kind because it's using harmful behaviours. They're biting and they're scratching, so it is resulting in injury. But they're not necessarily trying to repel you. They might actually be trying to engage you in interaction, so they're maybe trying to reduce the distance between you and them rather than increase it. But they're just doing it in an inappropriate way. So we've already spoken about what this looks like and how it develops. But how can we stop it? How do we stop it? What is reinforcing cats playing like this? Ambushing people, jumping on people's legs or feet or hands. Our reaction, yeah. So if you imagine us as being giant mice, if we go and move around quickly, we just sound like a massive mouse squealing and moving around quickly. So that's actually just going to encourage them to do it again, because we've given them the reaction they're expecting. We've acted like a giant mouse, our prey species. So we want to stop doing that. How easy is it to stand still and quiet while a cat sinks her teeth into your leg? When I first started as a clinical animal behaviourist, that was the advice we gave. We would say, wear Wellingtons in the house so that you can stand stock still. Even if it's a small child, tell them to stand still and not squeal and run away if a cat pounces on them. In theory, it would work. In practice, that's incredibly difficult because you just need to react once and that will maintain the behaviour, that will continue the behaviour. But also, if the cat expects you to run around squealing and you don't, and you're just standing still, how are they going to feel? Disappointed? Frustrated? What does frustration do? What's the point of frustration? If you put money in a vending machine and your bag of crisps or your can of Coke doesn't fall out, what do? Or what do you see on TV? You smack it on the side, you kick it. You get angry, you don't get angry, you get frustrated. Anger is the next stage of frustration. But your behaviour is invigorated. You're going to try new things, you're going to increase the intensity of your behaviour so that you get your bag of crisps that you've paid good money for. So frustration, the aim of frustration is to invigorate your behaviour to get the thing that you want to happen. The thing that you expect to happen. So if a cat is pouncing on you, expecting you to run around squealing and you're just standing stock still, silent, they might just go, oh, okay, then I'll go and play with my toy. Or they might bite harder, scratch harder. They might climb up your legs. So you might be making the situation worse. That's a welfare concern for the cat, because frustration is a negative emotional state. It's not nice to feel frustrated, but it's also a health and safety concern for the people involved. So we don't want to make that situation worse. So what do we do instead? Distract. We have to be careful that the distraction doesn't reinforce the behaviour. So we could carry a toy around in our pockets, and whenever the cat does it, we could throw a toy away to get them to redirect that playful behaviour onto the toy. That could work. but they might learn that they have to attack our legs before we throw them the toy. So again, we're just reinforcing them attacking our legs. So rather than distraction, when do we use the toy? Before. Did you say? Yes, you said before. So if you can predict when the cat is likely to pounce on you, that's when you should be playing with them. If it's before a meal, some cats really like to play before a meal because that's when they would be showing predatory behaviour to gain access to food. So that might be a good time to play with them. If they're getting a bit hangry, they might be more likely to pounce and use sort of aggressive predatory type behaviour. So that might be a really good time to play with them. But you need to learn your individual cats. When are they most likely to do this? And before they start doing it, that's when you want to play with them using appropriate play behaviours, using appropriate toys. Okay? But we also need to make sure that they have enough to do by themselves, that they're not reliant on us for providing all of their entertainment. And we'll come on to that in a little bit. So aggression towards other, actually, you know what, I'm going to skip that because this is relevant to inappropriate play. So it might be inappropriate play that they're using to get our attention. It might be jumping up onto worktops, laptops, our newspaper that we're trying to read, our homework. It might be scratching carpets or furniture. It might be shouting really loudly. Basically anything that we find annoying and that we give them attention to stop them from doing it. So we're reinforcing that behaviour. We might think that we're telling them off, but they're like, oh, Mummy loves me. She's speaking to me. Oh, she's petting me. Now she's giving me food. Brilliant. I know what to do to get what I want. So again, like the inappropriate play, we want to preempt that behaviour. We want to get in there first. But we also need to make sure that they're not getting bored, that they're not getting frustrated, that they have enough to do by themselves throughout the day, and they're not relying on us. And we'll come on to that, what we can do about that in a minute. I'll just go back to aggression towards other cats. So we've talked about this quite extensively already. Cats, unless they perceive the other cat to be a member of the same social group, the chances are they will just at the very least tolerate the presence of their other cat, if not be really chronically stressed in their presence. And they can express that through aggressive behaviour, and that can be exacerbated by inappropriate distribution of resources around a household. Okay, we can't teach cats to like each other. We can't do that. So what we can do is reduce the social pressure on them by reducing competition for resources, by reducing the need for them to walk past each other at the same level. That's the best we can hope for, really. So we'll go on to talk about that. But first of all, we have to remember that a cat's behavioural responses to anything, whether that's a fear response, an inappropriate play response, their social response to other cats, they'll be affected by different things. So first of all, they're cats. They have a specific blueprint that will predispose them towards certain things, using avoidance or aggression, for instance, rather than appeasement. Their own individual genetics, so how timid or confident they are. What their previous experiences have been in their mother before they were born, in their socialisation period, and since then. What have they been learning, successful or not successful, in getting what they want, whether that's food, mate, attention, avoiding a potential threat. What's their health status? I keep saying if there's any change of behaviour, you need to take the cat to the vet as the first step in solving that issue. And we have to think about the current environment. So we're going to think about more about the current environment next. But just to sort of give a very quick troubleshooting summary for all the problems that we've just talked about, is that it depends on the behaviour very much. So what the underlying emotion is. If it's a sudden change of behaviour, go to the vet. Remember that these are normal behaviours in most instances. So it might just be a case of offering the cat an alternative outlet. So if it's scratching behaviour, Give them a cat scratching post that they recognise as being a cat scratching post. If they're going to the toilet, make sure that you're cleaning the litter tray out and that they have access to the litter tray. Make sure that they can access all of their resources without having to walk past another cat. Provide them with entertainment, whether that's feeding, enrichment, or appropriate toys. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Allow them to control their own environment as much as possible. Give them choice, give them control. If they're stuck in a cage for 8 hours, 9 hours a day with very little control, they're probably going to develop more problematic behaviours than if they had free reign of the house, for instance. But adding complexity to the house, and that includes 3D complexity, giving them more stuff to do, that they have the choice to engage with or not, that can actually reduce so many problems and meet all of their welfare needs. So we'll talk about that next. Environmental optimisation means providing a social and physical environment that meets the individual cat's specific needs as an individual, but also as a member of the cat species. And failing to do so can lead to unacceptable living conditions, which is a welfare concern for them, but also can be an inconvenience for us. It can be annoying, it can also be very expensive. You might end up getting lots of complaints from your neighbours. For example, if your cat is frightened or bored and is wailing, or they're fighting with other cats and wailing. So, there's a broader public concern in meeting your cat's welfare needs as well. So again, remember, cats are both hunter and prey, and they're solitary survivors. So that's key in meeting their welfare needs and in providing an appropriate environment for them. So this is a framework that we can use for assessing how good our households are in terms of meeting a cat's welfare needs. So a safe place, distributed resources, play, opportunities for play and predation, predictable interactions with people or other species like dogs, and scent maintenance. So providing a safe space. This can be as simple as providing a cardboard box. Cats are famous all over the internet for loving cardboard boxes. Tigers and lions, it doesn't matter what species of cat they are. You can Google that, tigers and cardboard boxes. You'll find lots of evidence that any cat loves a cardboard box. If you put the cardboard box on their side, they can hide in it. They can also perch on top of it if it's sturdy enough. Obviously, if it's a floppy one, they might fall off. But they might like to just go inside it as well. Vertical space. This helps them feel safe because they can better view their environment. They can better see if there's any potential threats. They can also see better where there's potential escape routes. They just have a better view of their environment. Some considerations, though, for providing safe spaces. We need to make sure that if we're providing a space that's just large enough for one cat, which might be preferable, that they're not stuck up there because another cat is blocking their exit from it. So make sure that there's more than one entry or exit to that safe space. Make sure there's at least one per cat, so one per cat plus one is ideal. Make sure it's well spaced out. So on this wall, this is a fantastic wall, but it's all on one wall. 2 cats live in this house, and they do get on well, so that's not a particular issue for them, but we want to make sure that they do actually have elevated spaces in other parts of the house that they can utilise without having to go near each other. Also, this is a non-slip surface, so if they are jumping up onto surfaces, we don't want them sliding. So make sure that they're non-slip surfaces. And that all the elevated surfaces are accessible to all individuals. So if you've got a kitten or you've got an elderly cat, they can all access the surfaces. We just have to maybe make them lower down or a series of steps leading up to the higher areas. We also want to provide multiple but well distributed environmental resources, so that's including the safe space, but also includes food, water, toileting opportunities, scratching posts, the safe space, and playing opportunities. But again, can't stress this enough. If you have a multi-cat household, they need to be able to access all of the resources whenever they want without having to pass another cat at the same level. So this means separate toileting sites, separate feeding sites, and enough of each to support all of the cats living in the area. How many litter trays? 1. The next pillar of a healthy environment for cats is providing opportunities for play and predatory behaviour. So, I'll let you watch. Well, I'll speak over the video because it's quite a long video. Have we already talked about how many times a cat might hunt in a day? Yes. How many times? 10 to 20. So, over a 24-hour period, how many minutes is a cat spending on acquiring food? I'll ask an alternative question. If we feed our cats from a bowl once, twice, 3 times, 4 times a day, how many minutes is a cat spending acquiring food? 10 minutes over the whole period of day? Yeah, possibly. But if they're hunting 10 to 20 times a day, it's a lot more than 10 minutes that they're spending on acquiring food. So we can use puzzle feeders as a way to increase the time that cats in our homes are spending acquiring food. When they're hunting, they're using problem-solving skills. They're assessing the situation, they're calculating distances, heights, how fast they have to run, how high they have to jump, whether they're going to grab the prey species with their paws or their mouth, whether they have to pluck feathers or lick fur off. They're thinking about all these things. If we just feed them in a bowl, they're not problem solving, they're not using their bodies apart from their mouths, and it's eaten in seconds, if not minutes, if not seconds. So we can use puzzle feeders to get them to problem solve, use their cognitive skills, and use different parts of their body. They might not be exactly the types of body parts that they would be using in a hunting sequence, but at least we're getting them more active than just eating from a bowl. So that's one, a tower maze, I think it's called. So the cat is pulling the food from the different levels down into the bowl at the bottom and then scooping them out with a paw and then eating them. This is a ball with holes in it that they have to tap along the floor, and as it rolls along the floor, bits of food comes out. So these are commercially bought ones. You can buy them in pet shops, on the internet, but you can also make cheap ones yourself. Cardboard, again, brilliant material. So cheap. We all have this in our house. We get deliveries every day. Most of us use toilet paper or kitchen roll, so we have an abundance of cardboard tubes in our homes, shoe boxes, plastic bottles. We should be reducing our one-use plastic bottles, but we can recycle them by giving them to cats. This isn't ideal because there's 2 cats using the same feeding bottle. But if you do have a plastic bottle, you just cut holes in it, like the green ball, and then the cat just rolls it along the ground and bits of food comes out. It's a really cheap and cheerful way of prolonging that feeding experience for cats, getting them to use their brains, getting them to use more body parts. Okay, if your cat has never eaten out of anything but a food bowl before, you might want to introduce it very carefully so that they don't become frustrated or starve. We want them to continue eating a healthy amount of food. So we want to continue feeding them in their normal way, but take a little bit of that food ration and put it in the puzzle feeder. Make sure it's a puzzle feeder that you can change the difficulty levels and make it as easy as possible. Show the cat, if you tap this ball along the floor, bits of food come out. If you stick your paw in here and do this, use your own hand because they can learn through imitation, bits of food fall out. So show them. Fill it with food, scatter food all around it to encourage them closer to it so that they are encouraged to start manipulating it themselves. Make it really easy to begin with And then once they know how to use it, then you can reduce the amount of food in it and increase the difficulty levels. If you don't, and it's too difficult to begin with, they might just ignore it and not use it at all, and then you've just taught them to ignore feeding enrichment. Or they'll try to engage with it, but they become very frustrated. And again, we all know now, that's not a nice feeling. So we want them to be able to engage with it and actually enjoy doing so. So if we have cats living in groups in our homes, we need to meet all their preferences. So some cats might prefer the ball, some cats might prefer the tower, the maze feeder. We need to have at least one per cat, and preferably separated. The problem with the balls, or the movable ones, is sometimes they end up coming together, even if you've tried to keep them separate. So especially if you have non-bonded cats, then I would physically separate them to do that so they don't accidentally come together. If they're bonded, that's maybe less of an issue. Play. So we want to give our cats lots of play opportunities, so giving them toys that they can play with by themselves or with people. But the important thing about toys is that they mimic prey in some way, whether that's the texture or the movement. Some cats get bored quite easily and might want a new toy every day. Other cats are a little bit more sensitive and might only want a new toy once a week or even once a month. So learn what your cat's preferences are and try to meet them. Catnip might encourage cats to play, especially cats who are maybe a little bit more unsure about play. Maybe they've never been given a toy before. But only about 50% of cats are catnip responders. So they have to have, it's a genetic thing. If they don't have that gene, they won't detect it, they won't know that's a thing. But if they do have that gene, they will have a physiological stress response to the catnip. So you can use catnip to encourage those cats to play. A word of warning though, some cats can actually get a bit aggressive or very aggressive when they're stimulated by catnip. So for those cats, I wouldn't advise giving them catnip, especially if they're in a multi-cat household, because that can cause problems between the cats. Laser pointers. You can buy them to play with cats. I've put sort of asterisks around them because they can cause cats quite a lot of frustration. Because, why do we think they might cause cat frustration? They can't catch the light, no. So you could use them, but lead the cat to a toy or a small pile of food. So there is actually a reward when they pounce on it. You don't have to do it every time because their hunting attempts aren't always successful. So it doesn't have to be every time, but at least some of the time. But really, there's probably better toys to play with anyway. Object play, so they can, again, you have to meet the cat's preferences. So cats will have different preferences for what types of toy they play with. So these are 2 videos I'll play. I think I can play them separately. This is quite a long video. This is my hallway. It looks like an Amazon depot or something with all the we just had a big delivery. And rather than just putting it straight in the recycling bin, I thought I'll make a big playpen for my cat. So we're using a normal cat toy, but we've just added an extra element in, so he can chase, go through holes and over big lumpy bits of cardboard. And it's just changed his normal play routine a little bit. It's just added some extra interest to it. So he's really enjoying that. And then his brother wasn't so interested because he prefers tinsel toys. So he likes playing catch, he likes playing fetch. I think he was a dog in a past life. So they're brothers, but they have very different play preferences. So we have to meet both cats' play preferences. He's also a little monster when he gets catnip, so no catnip in my house. Okay, so we have to make sure that when we're playing with our cats in multi-cat households, we're preventing a build-up of social pressure between the cats, so no catnip in my house. We need to modify play for the individual. Be aware that their play preferences might change as they age as well. So keep monitoring, try new things every so often because they might have a new preference that you're not aware of. Make sure that you're preventing injury. So the fishing rod toys, anything with a long sort of string-like part, make sure that they don't have free access to those toys because that can be a strangulation hazard. Other toys they can have access to, like the tinsel toys, things like that, as long as you know they're not going to ingest it, because some cats, if they have pica, so if they ingest non-food items, that might be a risk for them, but for most cats it would be safe to leave toys around so they can play when you're not there. But fishing rod toys, anything with a string, keep that away from cats when you're not there to supervise or to play with them. And avoid toys that will disturb other cats. What happened next? This was the picture I didn't have this morning, but I tried to. And this poor cat is very unsuspecting. This cat looks like they're doing it on purpose. I'm sure they're not, but they are. They're just waiting to see what happens. Yeah, so be careful that the cats are appropriate for a multi-cat household. Next pillar of a healthy environment then is meeting their interactive needs with humans. So providing positive, consistent and predictable interactions with people. Consistency is really key. Predictability is really key. Cats are creatures of routine, of comfort. They want to know what's happening. They like to have control. And to have control, they need predictability. So there was a study done on where cats like to be stroked or touched by people. And they found that being touched in front of the ears, being stroked in this area in particular was preferred, looking at their body language. And this area resulted in the least positive behavioural responses. But every cat is an individual. So we want to ask them, where do you like being touched and for how long? So unless it's your cat who you know very well, but even then, it's worth checking in with them every so often. Use a consent test. So let them approach you. If they approach and sniff you and maybe rub you, then you can stroke them around the cheek in this front of ear area, maybe for about 3 seconds, and then stop and just take your hand away and see what they do. If they seek further interaction, carry on for another 3 seconds. Maybe try other parts of their body and see if they come back and ask for more. But keep checking in with them, keep asking them, is this okay? Do you like this? Do you want more of this? Don't assume that they want more of it because you're enjoying it. And actually, when cats initiate interactions with us, the interactions last longer than when we initiate the interactions with them. If we initiate the interactions with them, they might just be tolerating us. They might just be humouring us, like, okay then, I know you really enjoy this, so I'll put up with this for a wee while, but I'd rather just go back to doing what I was doing before. But if they're initiating it, then obviously they're wanting it. So they'll enjoy it more. Some considerations though, every cat's an individual, so get to know your individual cats, get to understand their body language, how they express what they like and don't like. If you have more than one cat in the household, make sure that each of them is getting attention from you if that's what they enjoy. Not all of you have sociable cats, I know, so if they don't enjoy your attention, don't force it on them, wait for them to come to you. And accommodate for changing preferences as the cat ages, as we've just discussed. Any sudden changes, again, get that checked out by the vet. So if your cat used to enjoy being stroked and then they suddenly no longer enjoy it, or they're reacting badly to being touched in a specific part of their body, get that checked out by the vet. So respect the individual. Remember, this will be influenced by genetics, by their early learning experiences before and after birth, and that will all influence how sociable they are and how able they are to cope with interactions with people, interactions with other cats, interactions with dogs. Okay, for cats who don't like being physically handled, we can actually build their trust with us by using training, because it keeps our hands away from them. So we can use target sticks like this to interact with them, but without getting our hands too close. It can also just be really fun for them to do. So even cats who like being stroked, this is just a new thing for them to do. It gets them using their brain. It's just novelty, it's stimulation, it's interesting for them. We can also use it to teach useful behaviours as well. And I'll come on to that in a minute. First of all though, we're just going to use reward-based training, so positive reinforcement training. So that means that we're rewarding the behaviours we want to see more of by giving the cat something they enjoy. So easiest thing is to use small pieces of food. But I actually know someone who grooms her cat's cheeks with a brush. That's the best thing in the world for that cat. So she uses that to train a lot of different behaviours. She's a really good cat trainer, but that's his favourite reward. So again, get to know your cat. Break down the behaviour that you want to train into tiny steps, a bit like what we've already discussed, so that they're achievable steps. So you can't just ask a cat, go and get my socks out of the washing machine. You'll be waiting a long time. So you have to break that down into tiny little steps and reward each step and then build it up to the bigger behaviour. Cats are very trainable, but they are more difficult than training a dog, for example. And one of the problems is that they have quite a short attention span. So with a dog, you could train for quite a long time. You know, training classes can last for an hour. You're lucky to get 5 minutes out of a cat. So do keep training sessions short. They have to enjoy it. As soon as they look like they're losing attention, you know, just stop, quit while you're ahead. So maybe you only get to reward them 3 times before you have to stop. So we can train for fun, or we can train behaviours that are actually quite useful for us as owners, and that can help reduce cats' stress when they have to do something that they would otherwise be frightened of. So we can use positive reinforcement training to teach the cat to become willing participants in veterinary procedures, or going in cat carriers to go to the vets, or to go to the groomers, or to go to the boarding house. This will help improve their physical and mental comfort. It will enhance their self-confidence because they're willingly taking part. They know what's about to happen. It's not happening to them. And it also increases our safety as caregivers, and helps the safety of our groomers, our vets, our people working in our boarding facilities, etc. So we can use this for any kind of sort of veterinary procedure, whether it's just getting them in the carrier to go to the vets, asking them to walk onto weighing scales, but we can even teach them to present an arm, a leg, or a neck to have a blood draw. They do this in zoos with big dangerous animals, so we can definitely do that with our mini tigers in our houses. Getting their paws checked, her nails clipped. I think somebody was asking me about this in the break. Cats don't particularly like being picked up and having their claws cut, but we can teach them to participate in that voluntarily. Having their mouths, eyes, ears checked, having eye drops put in, ear drops put in, whatever it is, we can teach them that this is okay, and you can actually take part in it. So I'm going to show you how I taught my cat to go voluntarily into a cat carrier, and you can use a similar technique for teaching all the other behaviours that we've just talked about. So first of all, I'm introducing her to a target stick. So it doesn't have to be a commercially bought target stick, it's just a, you know when you can make something longer? I can't think of the word, like telescopic, you can make it longer, and then there's just a ball on the end. So it's just a stick with a ball on the end, basically. But you can use anything, you can use a wooden spoon, just anything that's obvious to the cat that they can touch a part of their body to. The most obvious thing is their nose, but it can be anything. So if you look at protected barrier training in zoos, where they're teaching big dangerous animals to present parts of their body, it could be their bum that they're presenting for an injection, it could be an arm or their neck for a blood draw, it could be getting them to open their mouths for a dental check. We can teach them to do all these things using target training. So it doesn't have to just be them touching their nose to the target. It can be any body part. So watch this video and just see what happens. So you hear the clicking noise. That's a secondary reinforcer. So I'm using food to reinforce her touching her nose to the target. But I can't feed her immediately the second that she touches her nose. So I'm using a bridging technique. So I'm pairing, before I do this, I've paired the noise of the click with giving food. You click, give food, click, give food. And then she learns that when I hear the click, I know food is coming. And then that just makes it easier for you to deliver the reward, but just take a little bit longer over it. So when she touches her nose, she hears the click. So immediately she touches her nose, she hears the click. And then I'm feeding her, and it's just like that paste, the yogurt paste stuff that I'm using on my finger. 16-year-old cat, never been trained before. So you can teach old cats new tricks. So to begin with, I'm just teaching her that if she touches her nose to that ball on the end of the stick, she gets a food reward. And then we can progress that to a mat. So to begin with, I used the target, I pointed at the mat with the target, so I got her to move onto the mat. I phased out the target stick and replaced it with a hand gesture, so that she learns when I point at something, she has to go and sit there, and specifically on this blanket. She's been very patient, isn't she? Let's train. Mat. Okay? So we build that up, we do that, get her really confident that she knows what she's meant to do. I think I built it up to ask her to then sit on the blanket. And then I gradually moved the blanket closer and closer to an open cat carrier. So I took the lid off to make it less scary, moved the blanket closer and closer, getting her to sit on it each time, asking her to sit on it, sorry, I should say asking her. It's up to her whether she sat on it or not. She didn't have to, it was her choice. Moved the blanket inside, so she was going in there of her own accord. And then I gradually started to add the lid on, but not fully on. We just sort of started to slide it slowly on from the back and building it up slowly, gradually, breaking that behaviour down into small components, making sure she's confident at each step before making it more difficult for her, until eventually she's voluntarily going into the carrier, having the door closed, and she's perfectly relaxed with that. I'm still feeding her, still rewarding her, still telling her it's okay. You can see her pupils are dilated here. It's probably just because it's really dark in there, rather than her being frightened or worried about it. So to get from here to here, you do have to go slowly. You don't just put the lid on and then shut the door. You know, you would keep the door open, close it by a centimetre, close it by another centimetre, close it by another centimetre, then it's fully closed but then immediately opened, and then you build up time for the length of time that the door is closed for.
Question.
Yes.
After you've done all this, and she's in the carriage, and you bring her to the vet, when you bring her back, does she still go back?
It's a really good question, because it might undo all of this good work. If I put the carrier away and didn't produce it again until the next time she went to the vet, she probably wouldn't go into it again. We need to keep reinforcing this behaviour. So I would leave the cat, actually, this was just one of her beds. This just stayed out constantly, and she would just go and sleep in it. With she's no longer with us, but with my current cats, I take the door off, but just leave the whole carrier in, just around the house, and one of them just goes in and sleeps in there. So they associate that with being a safe place. So it remains a safe place, even though sometimes it's associated with going to the vet. But with her, because I had taught her, I replaced the point and cue with mat. You might have heard me saying it on the video. So rather than cat carrier, which is a bit of a mouthful, I just would say mat, and that was her cue to go into the cat carrier. I would continue doing that, so it stayed a nicely reinforced behaviour. But yeah, very good question. Any other questions? No. Okay. So the last pillar of a healthy environment for cats then is providing an environment that respects the importance of a cat's sense of smell. So again, to remind you, they smell as we do, just sniffing the air, but they also have this extra vomeronasal organ where they suck air up into the roof of the mouth, and they can detect pheromones. So we want to allow cats to scent mark in their core area. Hopefully that will just be facial marking because they feel relaxed and confident in their environment. But that's really important. It's important for them to be able to smell those scents because it helps them relax when they smell those. Now, in our houses stink of our cats whether we like it or not. We might not be able to smell their facial pheromones, but they will be all over the house and the cats will be able to smell that. But if we take our cats to a boarding establishment, for instance, they will be cleaning. It's easier to clean a whole cage and thoroughly get rid of the cat's smell than it is for our house, which is full of soft furnishings which really hold on to smells. So when our cats go to a boarding house, for instance, there's nothing that smells of them or their home there. And if they're overzealous with their cleaning, that even though they've been there for a few hours, the environment starts smelling of themselves, then the boarding staff come and clean everything and then it no longer smells of them. And that can be quite stressful for cats. Also, if cats are going to another new environment, so maybe we've taken a new cat from a shelter, our house isn't going to smell of them, and that can be quite stressful for them. So we want to maintain their scent profile within their environment. So if you're getting a new cat from a shelter, or you're taking your cat to a boarding establishment, ask for bedding from the shelter or give bedding from your house to the boarding establishment. So something that smells of the cat in their previous environment always goes with them whenever they go to a new place. And make sure that if it's a boarding establishment, ask them, just make sure you always keep this bed with them. Unless it's really badly soiled, of course, and then they might have to change it. But as much as possible, there has to be something that smells of them in their environment with them. And that helps lower their stress levels because it's something that smells familiar, it's something that smells of the positive pheromones that are associated with positive feelings. If we're having new kittens moving into our house, then sometimes we might find that if they haven't experienced novel scents in their socialisation period, they might actually spray urine on novel items coming to their house because they have no expectation of new smells coming to the house. So if something new comes into the house, smells weird, that's a potentially dangerous item. So they spray on it to remind themselves that's a potentially dangerous item. So we want to habituate our kittens to as many smells as possible. If that doesn't happen, and again, we have very limited control over that, we might find that our cats are spraying on new objects. If you know your cat does that, rub the new object with the cat's bedding before you bring it right into the house, or quarantine it in another room until it picks up the smells of the house, and then your cat might be less likely to spray on that new item. That includes your friends' handbags. Synthetic feline pheromones like feline can help reduce the stress of cats, whether that's in a shelter environment, boarding establishment, or if you're bringing a new cat into your home for the first time. Sometimes if there's something stressful is going to happen, like a fireworks season, or your next door neighbours are going to be getting construction work done in their flat, then maybe just plug in the feline diffuser again, and that can help reduce their stress. So that is a synthetic version of the facial pheromone, the one that's associated with positive feelings, relaxed feelings. It doesn't always work because if there is an obvious threat there, then they're going to ignore that message that's telling them to relax because there's an obvious threat. But sometimes it can help just reduce their anxiety a little bit. Do be aware, again, if you have a multi-cat household, that if one of your cats has to go somewhere else, maybe to the vets overnight, they're going to come back smelling weird. They're going to come back smelling of chemicals, of unfamiliar people, but they might have lost their group scent profile. So your cat who's stayed in the home might not recognise them anymore. They might not realise that that's actually a member of the social group because they smell different. So if it's just routine vaccinations or health checks, take all of your cats at the same time. I do. These are my boys. They go together for their vaccinations. If they have both been to the vets individually, though, for various injuries or illnesses, so when I bring them home, I will put them in another room to begin with and make sure I stroke them a lot in there, make sure that they're smelling of the house again. So when I'm stroking them and grooming them, I'm trying to get rid of the vet smell, but I'm also trying to put my smell back on them. And then swap scents between the two cats. So I'm stroking the other cat and then going into this cat and stroking him. So I'm swapping the scents. So I'm creating that group scent profile again. And then I'll let them have physical contact with each other. Their bond is so fragile. Even though they're bonded individuals, if one of them comes back smelling weird, that could be enough to break that bond. And for me, if their bond was to be broken, I'd have to make the difficult decision to rehome one of them. I don't want to have two cats in separate social groups living together. But which one would I rehome? It's not worth thinking about, is it? So let's just stop that from happening. Let's prevent that from happening. Make sure they stay bonded. Make sure that they have access to all of their resources, one per cat plus one, distributed widely and appropriately around the house, having different levels so they don't have to walk past each other at the same level, making sure that they smell like them and members of the same social group, making sure that all of their welfare needs are met, that they're protected from developing fears. And if we can do that, we can try to keep them as happy as possible and keep them being friends. So remember, cats' body language, their communication, their social behaviour evolved as a result of them being solitary survivors and territorial animals. Even though their behaviours might appear problematic to us, in most cases they are just normal cat behaviours. They're just being expressed in a way that we find problematic. So we have to find an appropriate way for them to express that normal cat behaviour. But don't be complacent, it can also represent a welfare concern. So check in with your vet and then try to support them cope better in challenging environments or situations. This will depend on what the problem is, what the situation is. Hopefully the information I've given you today will give you some insights into better supporting your cat. But if you are in any doubt, check in with your vet and they might help signpost you to a behaviourist for further support. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, so let's thank Jenna again for sharing. So you have previously indicated that you want to be included in the mailing list. We will be sending out invites for future seminars through your emails. And remember to help us do the feedback form. Thank you for coming.